Um, yeah, so just keep in mind again that the business plan, it's a tool. All of these things are tools, but there's not one tool that does everything. So don't stress yourself out trying to make this magical business plan that just answers every question anyone could ever have. I always think about it as if you were sitting down to dinner with someone, what are the things you would talk about? And that's also what should be in your business plan and about at that level, a conversational level. Again, if they want to deep dive, they'll sure ask you. All right, before we start today, is there anything else anyone would like to say about their business plan? Any questions anyone has about last week before we dive into this week? All right, we'll make sure to leave time at the end too, so I'm always happy to go over any lesson that we've done. But today we're going to dive into blogs. And blogs are kind of this word that keep coming up. It's one of these things that I feel like 15 years ago, blogs were kind of a new thing. It was like an online diary that you could share your thoughts and was kind of new. I felt like blogs kind of hit their peak and then died off. Oftentimes, after they died off, that's when YouTube became a way of communicating. Then it kind of switched to podcast. And now I would say blogs are back. So that's the topic of today. Blogs are back, the written podcast. And so we're going to talk through today what is a blog, how we can write a blog, the benefits of blogging, and kind of break down this stereotype that it's an old school thing that no one really does anymore because they are back and they're only going to grow in momentum. And just like writing a business plan or setting goals or anything else, I hope by the end of today you realize that blogging is not overwhelming. It can be kind of fun. It's conversational. It's not as hard as you think, but consistency is key. So we're going to talk about that today. So are there any other questions before we dive in? All right, let me pull up my notes here. Have a few more people joining. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So, again, the topic today, blogs are back, the written podcasts. So, we just have 5 points today, but they go in depth. And I really encourage you, just like last week, to take some good notes and put together an action plan. By the time we end today, I would love for you to have an action plan that you're going to put into place over the next 7 days. And so, let's first talk about why create a blog for your business. So, maintaining a business blog provides a benefit to any content strategy. So, we talk about content strategy, or we also talk about communication strategy. So, marketers who prioritize blogging are 13 times more likely to see a return on investment in their marketing dollars. 55% of marketers say that blog content creation is their top inbound marketing priority. So, inbound marketing priority, that's something that you're doing for you. You're not sending it out necessarily, you're doing it hoping people find it. And marketers across the board will say that blogging should be a top priority. 9 out of 10 marketers produce blogs posts to help achieve their overall marketing goals. So, we're going to talk through this a little bit. In creating useful content is an extremely important part of creating awareness about your business, products, and services. A blog allows you to go further in depth on specific topics than what you post on your website, and it puts a human face to your business. Let me adjust this just a little bit so I can see everybody. There we go. All right. So when we talk through that a little bit, so we use a blog for a couple of different ways, but one of the main things we use it is for search engine optimization, SEO, and that's something that you hear about a lot. SEO in a nutshell really is when someone Googles your business or a business in your field, what order do they come up in Google? Now, Google has a whole pie chart of what goes into that SEO. And I know that we've talked about that before. It's not one simple thing. But one of the things that goes into SEO are the keywords and the words that are built into your website. Now, there's kind of this fine line because we don't want websites to be so content heavy that you have to scroll and scroll and scroll forever. Over 90%, they usually say 85 to 90% of websites are viewed on a phone. So have you ever viewed a paragraph or two paragraphs or three paragraphs on your phone? It can often seem like you're scrolling forever. So when we build websites, we always have this kind of dilemma where we want enough content, enough words, enough keywords to be in our website to help our search engine optimization, but we want to keep our websites very mobile friendly, concise, to the point. And so, how do you kind of find that blend? And blogging is a perfect solution to that. So, a blog should be an extension of your conversation. So, nowadays on websites, we often have who, what, where, when, how, right? Who am I? How long have I been doing this? And how do you get in touch with me? That's kind of the basis for a website. And sometimes we have additional resource pages or things like that. But a blog is another way to add more information, but to bury it just a little bit that you kind of have to dig for it. So let's go through that a little bit more together. All right, let me share my screen here. All right. So let's go back to blogs support your search engine optimization right here in the orange box. They added new content to your product, service, and business for search engines to find. They provide content to share on your social media platforms. They encourage inbound links, which also help your SEO, and they drive traffic to your website. So when we talk about next week, we're going to be talking about your social media calendar. And sometimes you think, man, I have to create content for my website. I have to create content for my social media. I have to create content to my blogs. This is a lot of information I have to create every month or every week. But if we do this right, they all tie together. So you create a blog post that then you share on your social media that then ties back to your website. So you're not having to create the same amount of work 3 times. You're really just letting that blog content grow for you. So when we think about blogs, we really think about a conversation that you have. So I always encourage people to start their blog writing, and we'll go into this in more detail. But what conversations are you having on a daily basis, a weekly basis? What is something that you have in your head that you feel like everyone should know, but they don't know because they're not in your industry? So with Lauren Ashley, let's say it's something about glass for your car, for your windshield. It might be something that you just know. It's a conversation you could have in the grocery store. It's a conversation you can have over the phone. It's a very simple, to you, it's a very simple concept. But to someone else, when you share that, they're always surprised or they just didn't know. You kind of see that light bulb click. So as we go through today, start thinking, start jotting down some topics that maybe come natural to you because you're the expert in that industry, but other people don't quite understand it. So be thinking of that. What are those conversations that you have over and over and over? And then we're going to talk about how can you take those same conversations, turn them into a written blog that can live on your website, that can be shared through SEO, and can help your whole marketing strategy. And the great thing about blogs is they are free. So that's another bonus. All right. So let's answer the question, is blogging right for my business? Because not every marketing strategy is right for every business or is right for every time. So instead of thinking of blogging as one more thing, think of it as a break to write something that you're passionate about, your industry, your business, your products and services. If you cannot commit the time and people to a blog, you should not start one. Remember though, that the more you write, the faster you will get. You should also not start a blog if you know you are, or anyone appropriate for your company will hate doing it. This becomes more of a chore and the quality will suffer. So again, if this is something that is just not you and it's going to come across in the language that, oh, this is a chore, it might not be the right thing to do. But blogging is something that is fairly easy to hand off. So obviously you still want it to have the tone of voice of your company, but this is something maybe you could hand off to a coworker. Maybe this is something you can hand off to an employee, to an intern. Maybe you have a high school student who lives in your house or is close to you. Maybe you could pay them something like a set amount for them to write your blogs for you. And we'll go through that a little bit. So, questions to ask yourself before you start blogging. Do you have the time? Do you or someone on your team should dedicate around an hour a week to writing blog content? Now, if you have to do research, it might be a little bit more. But if these are conversations that you're having or that you could have at the spur of a moment, it's typically about an hour per blog. Can you stick to a schedule to update the blog? Blog needs to be posted on your website and linked to your social media platforms. Consistency is key to a good blogging network. So if you decide that you're going to post a blog once a week, that needs to be a consistent schedule. Maybe it's going to be every other week. That's okay. It just needs to be consistent. Even a blog that's posted once a month on a consistent schedule is going to be more effective in the long run than if you posted 3 the first week and then you didn't blog again for 4 or 5 more weeks. So just kind of keep that in mind when it comes to blogging. Can you create a blog on your site? Most websites have a blogging function, but you should double check before you start. Now, let's say that you don't have a full website. You could start a website that's more just a blogging website. So the purpose of that would be kind of similar to like a YouTube channel where you have all your videos living on the YouTube channel that you link into other things. So maybe you don't have a full website. You could look into having a very basic website. There's even free blogging sites out there where you could just have your blogs live, but you could link into your social media. The benefit of that is if someone wanted to go back and read more that you had, they could, because your blog would live on there. The bad side of that is besides your blogs, they're not going to get those call to actions. They're not going to have the other pieces that a website would offer. So there's kind of pros and cons to each. But I would say most current websites have a blogging feature that's already included in the price that you're paying. All right. Are there any questions before we go on? I know we have a lot to cover. All right. Let's keep diving in. We'll have some time at the end here. All right. So getting started. How do I even start a blog? That might be where you're at today. So blogging requires you to dedicate time to write about your industry, your business, your products or services. So the first thing you can do, and I would encourage you to do this today while we're on the call, or maybe as soon as you get off the call, or sometime in the next couple of days. So the first thing you're going to want to do is create a checklist. You're going to want to identify your target audience. So who are you writing to? This could be an age, a gender, a location. You're not writing to everyone. So just like you're not targeting your business to everyone, you're also not writing to everyone. But the nice thing about blogs is you could be reaching an audience that's greater than you are. So let's say that you are a chef and you're writing blogs and they tie into your restaurant. Obviously, you're attracting people that can actually come to your physical restaurant, but you're also inspiring people on a larger scale as well. So they could share their blog with friends and family that live all over the country or even all over the world. Now, if you're creating a blog that's for, let's say, moms, my daughter's in the background. Let's say to moms, you might want to create a blog that's a little bit more specific to women, that maybe is a little bit more that tone of voice, speaking to that age demographic. So keep that in mind. And if you're writing for a specific location, feel free to collaborate with other people in that location. Talk about different landmarks, different things in that location. But ideally, your target market of your blog should also be your target market of your business. Ideally, those two things should either tie together of who you're selling to now or who you hope to sell to. So maybe right now you mostly sell to men, but you hope to sell to more women. That would be a way to alter that blog a little bit. So that's going to be step 1 of your checklist. Step 2, you're going to create a list of blog topics. So one idea could be business focus. Demonstrate your expertise in your business, your field, or your industry. We always talk about one very strong strategy to marketing is to be the thought leader in your industry. So maybe someone doesn't need your service right now, but when they do, you're going to come to mind. Do you know someone, maybe it's an aunt or a friend or whatever, and man, if you need that, that's going to be your person. Like, for example, my mother in law does a lot of crocheting. So, crocheting is not a part of my everyday life. I don't even know how to do it. But if I did, if I had a question, if I needed to know what size of needle, I don't even know what they're called, needles. If I had a question about crocheting, she would be my go to because she's my thought leader on the topic. So think of people in your life that are the thought leaders. Maybe there's a thought leader on childcare. Maybe there's a thought leader on business. Maybe there's a thought leader on finances. Who's your go to person when you have a question? So, how can you become that go to person in your industry? And maybe you don't know everything, no one does. But let's say that someone doesn't need your service now. But if you can present yourself as a thought leader, when they do, you're going to become that go to person. So let's talk about a future focus. Write about timely topics in your industry or community. So if there's something big going on in your community and you're excited about it, write about it. Maybe there's something in your community that's proposed that's not coming up for a few years, but you could talk about how you could be a part of that when it does come or the planning of it. Write about an upcoming event or an event you will attend. Make a prediction about some aspect of your industry. So right now we can read the national news or we can read and kind of interpret these articles. So right now, for example, shipping is something that's in the national news. So none of us can predict exactly how shipping is going to look in the next 6 months, but you could write a blog post about how you predict that'll affect your industry or what you're going to do now or what you're preparing now to overcome those obstacles. That's something people are interested in because it's already in the national news. No one has a crystal ball, but at least it shows that you're being proactive. You understand what's up and coming. You're thinking about it. You're making an action plan towards it. And people want to know that. People are curious about what's in the future. This could also have to do with future holidays, future sales. Um, Obviously, Christmas is coming up, so retailers are talking about what Christmas is going to look this year, predicting maybe how the weather is going to impact it, how, again, different trends in the market are going to affect Christmas. So you could be a part of that conversation. If this is a conversation you're having with your spouse or your coworkers or customers, this could be a conversation you're having on your blog. Another topic could be employee focus. Showcasing things that your business or staff are doing for your local community. Showcasing your staff. You could have a blog post introducing a new staff member, what they bring to the table, the expertise they have. If they're a face that your customers are going to be seeing, you could introduce them on the blog. So then when people come into your store and see them, they know a little bit about them. And we always talk now more than ever about employee retention. If you have a new employee and they don't really know if they're fitting in or they don't know that they're doing a good job, we all have those doubts when we start a new position. If they're focused on if they're a feature on the blog, that's going to make them feel good. It's going to make them feel like they're part of the team, like they're valued, and like their skills are important. Another piece of that is to write about products or services that you offer. So write how-to guides, write showcase your products or services, make a top 5 list, a top 10 list. Everyone loves checkoff lists. So make a list and say, these are 10 things you can get ready for Christmas. These are 5 ways that you can detail your car, those kind of things. We like those, and those often have engagement. If you look at what gets ripped out of a magazine or what's saved from the newspaper, often it's the recipes, it's the checklist, it's the how-to-do list, it's top 10 tips about whatever your industry is about. So let's say you're a cleaning company. You can still give cleaning tips. That's not gonna, everyone knows that you can have cleaning tips. There's a million of them online. But if you're a cleaning company and you share top 10 tips on how to clean your shower, that's not going to put you out of business, but you're coming across as a thought leader, and people are going to pay attention to that because that's important. So always think about, what kind of things do you like to read? What do you clip out of the newspaper? What do you save out of a magazine article? What stops you from scrolling online or on Facebook? These are all topics you should think about. So our step 1 on the checklist is to identify your target market. Step 2 is to create a list of blog topics. I would encourage you to just start this list, just any topic you can think of, and maybe start by doing a few of each section, or you could go with one section and go crazy. And then the third step is to create a posting schedule. Publishing consistently can help you grow your business. Those who work with a good blogging schedule and publish content get 30% more traffic for each piece they publish. So whether you say, I'm going to publish every single Monday, or maybe I'm going to publish on the first of the month, or maybe I'm going to publish on the first Tuesday of the month, or every other Thursday, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We want to make sure that you do a blog schedule that works for you, but make sure that it's consistent. And if you do that, people will look forward to your blogs. So let's say that you post a blog on the first of the month, every month. People will look forward to that. They'll look forward to what you have to say, and they'll be more likely to read it. So the benefits to developing a schedule are, you can keep a consistent schedule. It lets you plan topics and write them ahead of time, and it helps you organize your content properly. So how to create a schedule. Decide how often you should post. The suggested amount is 2 times a month. That's kind of industry standard. So again, if you're really ambitious, you could do more than that. If you're even 1 time a month, that's okay. But I would really, 2 times a month is pretty typical for blogs. Write out a list of a variety of topics, and then write out a calendar on when you want to post each topic. So some of them are going to be more time sensitive. So let's say that you're going to be posting about Christmas. Okay, now is a good time. You're not going to want to be posting about Christmas in January or February. But there may be some other topics like how to clean your shower that's going to apply year round. So if you have your list of topics and you have your calendar, you can very easily start putting in what should go where. You can make sure to space out similar topics, but you can also look to see again if certain topics would work best in seasons. You can also think about if there's a series that should go. We're going to talk about that here a little bit more in a minute. But let's say that you have 3 or 4 topics that all go together. So rather than making one long blog post, you might decide that these should be 1, 2, 3, 4 once a week or every 2 weeks or whatever it is, so that people kind of get that series. Think of it as a TV show. If one plays off the other, it might make more sense that they follow each other. So by having that schedule, you can pencil them in. Now, the nice thing about the schedule is, let's say you have your topics and you have your schedule. You don't have to have all your blogs written to schedule them in. As long as you have the topics, you can pencil that in on a calendar and you can continue to write them up until that day. We're going to go over that here in a little bit more, but you could, in theory, schedule out your whole year before you even write your first blog post. So again, think of them as kind of 2 separate things. All right, do we have any questions so far over that checklist? Is that a pretty attainable checklist that you could do right away? Identifying your target audience, creating a list of blog topics, and creating a posting schedule. All right, let's keep going here. All right, so we talked about if we should do it and how we're going to get started. But now let's kind of talk about how to actually write the blog, okay? Again, it can seem like a lot, but it's actually very simple, and they may be some of the simplest things that you've written. So there's a couple, and in your notes, there's actually an example right here. Now, all of these examples came right from the Initiate 360 series. And so I didn't talk about that at the beginning like I do at most weeks. But again, if you go to native360.org, if you click on small business tools, you log into your Initiate account. If you haven't created an account, it just takes a couple minutes to create one. And all of this comes right from there. And so there's an example. This is an exact example that's on the Initiate tool that's provided through Native 360. So we're going to walk through this today, but it's really, you can use this as a template. So they can always look a little bit differently, but this is a pretty common blogging outline. So number one is you want to make a great headline. So you want to make it eye-catching, and you want to ask a question that can be answered through your blog. So like for this, understanding diesel exhaust after treatment solutions. Now, I don't know if that's a blog that I would be drawn to, but if you're in the diesel exhaust industry, that might be something that would draw your attention. So think of something, again, a headline similar to headlines of magazines or newspapers, and something that just kind of draws your attention. Number two, the amount of words. Aim for 500 to 1,500 words. That's about 1 to 3 pages of text. I would say a short blog could be about 3 paragraphs. So that is a very obtainable amount. If you think back to school and an assignment of writing 3 to 4 paragraphs, that's about the length of a blog. Studies have shown that the longer the blog post attracts more links, likes, and shares. So it's kind of finding that sweet spot. People want the information. They don't want clickbait where they see a headline and they click on it and it's just the basic information that they already know. They want you to be the thought leader and they want to learn a little bit, but this isn't a full report. This is really just a little bit more than they already know. Subheadings. People tend to skim prior to reading an article, so subheadings can help break up the text for skimming and reading. Bullet points, numbers, lists can also help visually break up the overall text. So especially if someone's looking at the blog on their phone, a full paragraph can be a little overwhelming. And so having space, having bullet points, having these keynotes can make it look like something that's going to be easy to read and is not going to be overwhelming. Use keywords and phrases that are already identified for your business SEO. Now, when we talk about SEO, this is so important because your blog is a great place to use terms that aren't quite the terms you would want to use, but are the everyday terms. So I'm going to give you an example here. We were helping a company who made custom-made furniture for banks and nurses stations. So he made furniture exactly to the specs that you needed. And so he called them modular furniture because they'd make them in a factory to your specs and they'd come and install them. But he didn't even use the word furniture. He would call them modular workstations, or even a word probably even greater than that. But everyone else that was searching was just looking for desk or bookshelf or custom made bank teller station, some of these things. So whenever we try to work the word furniture into his website, he would say, no. It's not furniture. It's a custom modular workstation. And we'd say, okay, that's great, but most people aren't using that term. When you go to a trade show, when you talk to carpenters, maybe they're using those terms, but your average person is just searching for bank teller bookshelf furniture. So he was really protective that he only wanted the top of the line business information, the words, the industry leading words on his website. So by incorporating some of the words like, bookshelf, furniture, some of those words into his blog, then as people were searching on Google for those words, his website was still coming up. So think of that in your own industry. You have words that you use that if you say that to the average person, they may not quite understand it. We always say, it sounds like Greek to me. So for example, we do graphic design here at Tally. And so in our office, we're often talking about PDFs and JPEGs and PNGs and transparents and layers and borders and cut lines and grid lines. We might talk about, do we want this PNG? Do we want this CMYK or RBG? These are some of the graphic design terms that we use. But if we go to a client and we say, we need a 300 DPI 5x7 with fourth inch bleed lines and CMYK, that sounds like Greek to them. So even though it's our terms that we understand, if I talk to a customer that way, they're not going to know. And they're not searching online for those words. So in our blog, we can talk at a very approachable level. So when we talk 300 DPI, all that means is that it's going to be something that you're going to print. So we might say, hey, do you need an invite that you're going to print this holiday season? That's really all it means, but it's a way to kind of bridge that gap between what people are searching and what people are saying versus what you're saying in the industry. So think about that a little bit. It's a way to be casual. It's a way to use the words that you might not want on your website, but that other people call it. It's even a way to use the words that are wrong. So let's say that there's something in your industry that people often call it the wrong thing. Now, you're not going to want that wrong word on your website, but in your blog, you could say, people often confuse what we actually do with this. Now, by having that wrong word in your blog, if people search for it, your website is going to come up on Google. So that's a way to kind of have a play on words of if someone calls you the wrong thing, you can put the wrong thing in your blog, but you can do it in a playful way that's explaining on why it's wrong or how it's confusing or how we're kind of like that, but we're different, but still having that wrong word on your website, but not having it front and center. Does anyone have any questions over that SEO piece? Because I think that that's really important. We always tell people, even if no one reads your blog, it's still a good use of time because of the search engine optimization, the SEO that it provides. So even if no one reads it, spending the time to write it, if you're using those keywords, is still a good use of time. Are there any examples that came to mind that you guys have that are maybe a word that is technically wrong, but in your industry, like if you were talking to professionals in your industry, are wrong, but a word that your normal consumer uses all the time? Does anyone else have a good example of that? Well, some of those words may kind of be a word that when you hear it, if someone calls and they ask, do you have this? It's like, well, that's not really the correct word. Jot those down, because if people are asking you, if people are saying those words, they're probably also searching for those words. So think of it that way. All right, let's go back. We just have a couple points left and then we'll have some time for questions here. Okay, so keyword and phrases. The next thing is we want bold imagery. Photos, graphics, videos can help make the content break up longer pieces of text. Imagery can also personalize the blog post to make it more accessible to readers. So adding some kind of photo in there, whether it's at the beginning, in the middle, is going to tell more to the story. Now, maybe this is a photo that you took, similar to like a newsletter, a photo from your month. Maybe it's a photo from an article or a piece that you found online, and that's okay. But making sure that you have some kind of imagery in there always helps. And the last piece, a call to action. This is something that calls your customers into action. So drives your customer to a conversation, to contact you, to buy now, to ask for feedback or reviews. What do you think? Let us know your thoughts. So typically at the end of a blog, you just read all this great information. They'll have something of, if you have more questions, contact us today. We'd love to see you. Swing by our store. If you're interested in this product, here's where you can get more information or buy now. So that's kind of in general, what a good blog looks like. And then typically, if there's capability on the website, having other blogs come up on the side, similar to what YouTube does. So when you're done reading this, or maybe you get partway through, but something over here catches your eye, so you're more likely to click on that next blog or that next piece of information, which just then keeps them more and more enthralled in your content. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about how to write it, what to actually, when we're putting our pen to paper, what to actually write. So these are just a few tips. So number one is trim the fat, we say. The more unnecessary words you trim from your writing, the easier it is to understand. Convey the information in the simplest way possible to not confuse the readers. Readers want to quickly understand the solution to their own problems, and simple sentences can fulfill that need. We often talk about that blogs are written at about a 4th grade to a 6th grade reading level. So when you think about that, you're really talking as if you ran into someone in the grocery store. You're not using industry words. You're not using crazy statistics or words that they would have to look up the definition to. Blogs are a way to really just talk about it as if maybe you ran into someone at a family reunion and they say, I didn't know anything about that. You're really just having that conversation. Blogs are a great way to be more personable and more approachable. So you never want to use language that makes someone feel like they just don't understand. The point of blog is to bring people in. So you never want to try to talk over someone's head. This is not the time to prove that you know every word in the industry. That comes in other pieces of your toolkit. This is really just to connect. So again, back to that graphic design example. This is when we really talk. We don't say we're going to use Pantone color 1572. We might just say blue because even though that Pantone color in our industry is a technical term, we're really just talking about colors, blues, green, teals. We might talk about how we don't want it to get cut off at the printer. That's why we use bleed lines. Or again, we're talking about this from a very easy, understandable way. So just keep that in mind as you're going through this, which also makes blogs a lot easier to write. Oftentimes in our office, we will write blogs for other companies, and we even have to read them and say, okay, this sounds great, but let's take it down a little bit. Make this a little bit more approachable and a little bit less industry professional. The next step is avoid redundancy. Using the same word or the same idea in consecutive sentences can be redundant. So to create a better experience, vary your words and cut repetitive words. So this is a good time to think of those other words that people might be searching for and use some of those words. Try to be creative into the words that you're using, even using a thesaurus. So instead of saying this is awesome, everything is awesome, we love our vendors, they're awesome, using some of those words to some other words to relay your message without using those same words over and over. And you can see that by editing your work. That's the next step. Before you publish your post, walk away from it. This helps bring a fresh idea writing. Another option is to have someone else look over it. We are big fans in our office of printing things out, just because when you read something on a screen, it's easy to miss the double words or the redundancy. So we often, you can even see, even my notes that I'm reading off my screen, I have printed off. Just because I think when you see it on paper, you really can walk away, come back to it, use a highlighter, use those old school editing tools that we learned in school with the red pen, and really edit this. Now, don't spend too much time. We're always our own worst critic. And so you don't need to go through and make it the best written piece you've ever had. Again, this is just a conversation, but make sure that grammatically it's correct and that you're using a unique set of words. So writing resources, again, use these online resources to help. Grammarly, there's a free version of Grammarly. It's an online tool that can help you with your writing if you don't feel confident in your grammar. It'll tell you where to put a comma, when you don't need a comma. It'll even tell you when a sentence doesn't quite make sense. So I am a big fan. I use the paid version of Grammarly because it does help me in all of my writing, my emails, my blog posts, everything that I do. But there is a free tool out there that'll help you with your writing. So if grammar is something that holds you up, it is a free tool. And there's another tool called Hemingway Editor. It does the same type of thing where it really helps you make your writing to that next level. It is insane how smart these two tools are. It has just a lot of intelligence in there where you write something, it'll help you restructure your sentence as if it's a person looking at it. Quillbot is another tool. So those would be three that I would really recommend looking into. Again, many of them have the free versions. All right, and our last step before we have some time for questions today is blogging is not just about posting an article. In addition to writing the blog post, you should engage with your readers in the comment section. You should read related articles for commenting on articles when it comes to maybe if you don't know what to say to these comments, do a little bit of research. How can you respond to them? Engage with other authors. So maybe there's someone else writing a blog post that has some following. Talk to them, ask them how they do it, ask them what kind of blogs get them the most engagement. And then you should always share your blog posts on social media. Another tip that's not on here that I would add would be to encourage guest bloggers. So maybe you want to bring on a specialist. So maybe you ask Pete if he could be a guest blogger for you. He is an expert in what he does at Native 360, and he's a tool that you have, a resource that you have. Maybe if you're writing something about marketing, asking someone like myself or someone from the marketing world to be a guest blogger or to maybe give you a quote to add to that. When you have these resources, just adding them to your toolkit not only just really brings that to the next level. So the last thing on this handout is really just some additional resources that you can find on the Initiate page, the tool that's provided through Native 360. So a few other articles, and if you click directly from the PDF, they will take you right to that spot. So there's a page called An Introduction to Using Blogs, How to Get Started Blogging, What to Write About, and a blog calendar template. So we just really pulled some notes from those articles to put this class together. But I would really encourage you to use those resources. They're free to you and learn more about blogging. So it looks like we have about 14 minutes left. Let's just kind of have some conversation. Pete, I guess before we dive in, is there anything you would like to add to this topic or anything you know about blogging from what you've done?
I would just like to know who's a good IT person. I look like a ghost up here today.
Yeah, you do.
So I've been back and forth. Sorry about that, trying to figure out what's going on here. I just added a new camera, so that could be it.
That could be it.
No, the kind of what you're talking about there, I think it's really, really good. And I'm learning a lot too about how to, maybe we should be doing a little bit more blogging and a little bit more communicating. And I think everything that you talked about there, any business could benefit from, blogging or just like, I really like the point you were making about the, the bullet points, right before Christmas and things of that sort, because year end, like with Janet and the glass company on here and anyone else, with the stingers, with the getting into cold weather, you could have a blog about the different things that you could do to make sure your car's functionable, things that you're not going to go out there to a dead battery, making sure the tires, the oil pressure and all that. You could really highlight some areas, and then at the bottom of your blog maybe just have a couple offers.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that.
Absolutely.
I'm going to turn my camera off here so I don't look. You see my clutter in the back there.
Yeah. So again, really just thinking through those topics. What are those topics that's what I always think about first. What are those topics that I'm not surprised that people don't know, because I understand that, we're all kind of in our own world of what we know and what we deal with. But kind of those topics that you're like, oh yeah, that's such a simple like, it's not something super complex. You're not going to, explain how an engine is built through a blog, but something as simple as some tips to keep your battery running through the winter. That's a simple conversation that you can have. And so thinking through some of those. And if you do have a topic that you feel like is more complex, breaking it into a section, into a session, or into different pieces. So maybe you have step 1, step 2, step 3, and those are your next 3 blogs. Or it's some kind of series where they play off each other. Another really good idea for blogs is just having a frequently asked questions. Hey, this is a question that we get. I know that I've seen in different keynote speakers, well, they'll have a box or a comment card, and it's called asking for a friend. And that's kind of a playful way to ask a silly question that you might be almost embarrassed that you don't know, or maybe it's a question that you don't want to ask, but if you're asking for a friend, then that makes it okay to ask, and that kind of breaks down that barrier. And so maybe that's a fun section that you have. Maybe you do a tip Tuesday where you talk about a tip that you do in your daily business that you forget that other people don't do. And so it's really just thinking through some of those ideas. And again, I really challenge you to think about, what do I read? What do I care about? What kind of format do I like? Do I like to read 3 solid paragraphs or 4 solid paragraphs? Do I like bullet points? I always appreciate articles or blogs where at the end they have a very simple next step. So the next step is to log on. The next step is, here's an action item. Just because I'm someone, I love big ideas, so I tend to get really excited. But then sometimes at the end of that, you just move on to your next thing. So having something that's, these are the next step. This is what, if you want more information, I like always having that call to action at the end. Because maybe someone gets to the end of your blog and they say, that all sounds great, but I don't have the time to do it. And that's what we deal with a lot here at Tally. That sounds great, I don't have the time. And so that next step could be, talk to us, talk to someone else. If you don't have, here's how to change your oil. But if you don't have time to do it, we're right here and we're happy to help you. And here's even a coupon or a discount code. So think through some of that. And I think just on the internet, the beautiful thing about the internet is it really is a space to just share information freely. And so I would just encourage you to, you might not give away your secret family recipe, but think of it as a space of, what information can I just give freely that's not going to take away from my business, but is going to just help people. And if you think of it that way, if we have, what information do I like to get? What information do I appreciate? And what information can I put out in the universe? Um, just kind of as an offering, and hopefully it does help my SEO, maybe gets me some business. I mean, our end goal is that it's going to help our business, but even if it doesn't, it's just a way to share that knowledge and to give information freely. All right. Are there any other questions? Are there any other topics that we can cover here with these last couple minutes? Does anyone currently have a blog? Is anyone excited to start a blog?
Yes, I am. I think earlier you said that the blog is linked to social media, or is it linked to a website, or is it both?
Ideally, a blog would live on your website. That's the number one ideal place. So on your website, where you have your hours and your info and your staff and all of that, ideally a website would live on your website, and then you would share it to social media.
Okay.
Done, so that people click it, they like it. But in order to see it on social media, when they click on it, it takes them to your website. Hopefully then once they're on your website, let's say they're reading about one specific thing. Once you get them to your website, they're also looking at other things. Oh, I didn't know that they offered this. And wow, I didn't realize that so and so works there. And I think I know where they're located. So the goal, the ultimate goal would be to build it on your website and then link it to social media. Now, if you don't have a website, if that's something that you don't have, you could create a blog. I should have done some research. I know that there are free blog spots. One of them used to be called blogspot.com. There are probably other resources where you could create just a free or a very inexpensive website almost for just your blogs to live on. Now, the benefit of doing that is then they all live there so that if someone reads one, they might read another one and they might read another one. Typically, even on those free blogging websites, you can also share a little bit of information. So maybe a business card's worth where you have your logo, your business name, your phone number, things like that. So that would be kind of not be the number one ideal, but that would be an inexpensive option if you don't have a website now or you don't have intentions to build a website. Now, maybe in the past you've thought, well, I don't need a website, and sometimes you don't. There are some businesses that really financially a website doesn't make sense, but this might push you over the edge, especially if people aren't finding you or you're trying to draw from a bigger area. Maybe by, well, if we had a website and we had a blog, maybe those two pieces together would make it worth it if you really have the time to dedicate to a blog. Now, if the blogs are written, let's say that you put them on a free site for now, you could always switch those over to a website down the future. One last thing I don't think that we covered are most websites have the capability that you can pre-write blogs and schedule them out. And that's a beautiful thing. So just like your social media, you can schedule things out, and we'll talk about that more next week when we develop our social media calendar. But you could write 6 or 8 blogs, have them in, we call it the queue, have it in the queue, and have them pre-scheduled out. So let's say that you're going to put a new blog out every single Monday at 9 a.m. You don't have to actually be at your computer at 9 a.m. on Monday. You could have them pre-written and you could have them already formatted on the free website for blogs or on your website. And then you can just set a schedule time. So like clockwork, without you having to do anything, they would automatically schedule and go out. So there's a lot of neat features of that, and that can help you stay consistent with your posting. That if you have something, maybe you say, well, I'm going to be out of town some Mondays, that's okay, because your blog can still go out and it looks as if you posted it, but it was already pre-scheduled. And by doing that, you can kind of get in a rhythm. When we talk about that rhythm of writing, oftentimes when you get in that mindset, if you're writing one blog, you could probably write 2 or maybe 3 or 4. So it might be that, just kind of like social media, once you kind of get in the groove, you could write out several blogs and have them ready. So instead of every week it becoming a chore, maybe once a quarter you sit down and you write out 6 blogs, and that's what you have for the quarter. And then you don't have to revisit that until next quarter. So those are just some tools that to keep it from becoming a chore, but being more of a, something that's obtainable to do. Whenever we write anything, whether it be a blog, a newsletter, a social media post, we always talk about kind of getting in the right frame of mind and making sure that you're in a good mood and you didn't just get off the phone with the angry customer, and you're in a good place, because that really does come across in writing. And so let's say that, oh, it's Monday and I got to write this and I only have 10 minutes, and you come across, your blog could come across grouchy because you're grouchy. Even if your words that you're using aren't, your tone could come across that way. So by pre-writing your blogs, you can really get into a good headspace. Maybe you have the right music on and you just had a good day and you have some good ideas and a new customer just came in, and you can really get in that good headspace to write 3 or 4 or 5 blogs off the topics that you already created, and you kind of get in that flow. And once you're in that flow, just keep writing, especially topics that aren't timely. If there's a topic and people ask you all the time how to do something, and it doesn't matter what time of year it is, if you're in that good headspace, write it then, knowing that you could always use that down the road. So I always do a lot of my brainstorming when I'm driving. I'll even talk out loud. I'll even talk to text and kind of start thinking through those topics, because that's when I can think of like, gosh, I get asked weekly how this works. I could write this out and I could write 3 paragraphs about that in 10 minutes. And one other way to think of your blog, think of it as a tool for your sales crew or for your staff. So let's say that you have something kind of specific about something in your industry. That's a sales tool, so that if someone calls and maybe your friend desk person answers the phone and they say, I just don't know how to do this, they can say, well, I can walk you through it, but we actually have a great blog that the owner wrote last month. Let me email you the link. Or if you go to our website, you can search for the topic. And so those live on your website and can be a tool that you can use as part of your toolkit. So again, it may take you some time up front to write it, but it might save you either time or it might save false information going out, because your team can go back to that. You could even use it as a training tool for your team, that maybe every Monday when that goes out, everyone on your team reads it. Maybe you guys talk about it if they have any questions, so that it could be used as a resource, a sales tool, but also as a training tool. So think of it that way, and that might encourage you to spend some time that typically you might not want to spend. All right. Well, it is 10 o'clock now, so I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. I'm happy to stick on a couple minutes if there's any other questions. And next week, we're going to dive into a social media calendar. So I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 9 o'clock. And I'll stick on if there's any other questions, but have a great week, everyone.